Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is prohibit. Let's look at some definitions. The first definition for prohibit is to formally forbid something by law, rule, or other authority. You might have seen this word on signs that say certain actions are not allowed at a particular location or place. Another definition for prohibit is to prevent or hinder. Prohibit is a regular verb. Its progressive form is made by just adding ing. We don't double the T because the emphasis is not on that syllable. This other way we form the past tense is just by adding ed. And this ed is going to make an id sound. Id. Prohibited. Okay? Today, I just have one phrasal verb for you. You might be going, phew, after days of many phrasal verbs. And the way you might hear prohibit used is to prohibit someone from, and what's going to come after that, from, is generally a gerund. That's an ing form. It looks like a verb, but it functions like a noun in a sentence. So if you prohibit someone from doing something, you are trying to prevent that person from doing an activity. You might be forbidding the person from doing an activity. Here it is in an example sentence. Zoos prohibit visitors from petting or feeding most animals. Okay? So zoos do not allow the guests, the visitors, to pet the bears or feed the lions, right? That would be a very bad idea. And as I told you before, you can see that there are two gerunds being used right after this from. And that's generally what you're going to hear and see when you see this phrasal verb, prohibit from. Okay. Today, let's compare simple future in active voice and simple future in passive voice. If this is the first video you happen to be watching, you might be going, what's the difference between active voice and passive voice? And I would suggest you go back to Monday's video with advice. I provided a longer description in that video about the differences between active and passive. But let's start with something you are already familiar with, and that's active voice. It is more common to hear the active voice used as people talk and as people write. To make future tense, we know there's several ways we can do it. Today we're going to focus on will. Okay? And what's nice about using will for the simple future is that it stays the same no matter what the subject is. And it's always going to be followed by a base verb. Don't need to do any other changes to the verb. So here's an example of an affirmative sentence in the future using will. They will prohibit pets from the premises. So what it's suggesting with the word premises, that could be like the building, the land, the area that might be enclosed or fenced in. So pets are not allowed. To make the negative, all we need to do is add not after will. And in spoken English, native speakers tend to say won't. And that's in our sentence here. The government won't prohibit people from walking outdoors. Okay. Finally, if we want to make a yes or no question for the future, we're going to change the order of our subject and will. So here's an example of that. Will the state prohibit large gatherings in May? So we're asking if our state government is going to stop people or make a rule to prevent large groups of people from getting together. Okay? So let's look at the passive. And as kind of a review or a reminder, we tend to use this passive voice when we don't know who is doing the action, or maybe it's just not important. We want to focus on who's receiving the action or the action that's being done. So to make a passive simple future sentence, we're going to use will, then we're going to use be, and then we use the past tense form of our verb. So that's what you're going to see here. Pets will be prohibited from the premises. Okay? We don't know who's making this rule in this sentence, and maybe, again, it's not important. We just need to know we can't bring our pets to this particular location. Here's an example of negative. Again, we're just going to insert not right after the will. People won't be prohibited from walking outdoors. Okay. Finally, if we want to make a question, we're going to change the order of our sentence here. Will large gatherings be prohibited in May? Okay. Finally, let's look at a few related words for our verb prohibit. The first is the noun, prohibition. Okay? There are a couple different meanings. If you see this word prohibition with a lowercase p, a little p, it generally means the act of prohibiting. Okay? That definition is going to be in the example sentence I have below. Let's look at it. The city council discussed the prohibition of short-term rentals. So here we have a city government considering not allowing a short-term rental. Okay? I want to point out another meaning for prohibition, and this you might see with a capital P, so like it's spelled on my notes today. And when you see it used that way, it's referring to a period of time, it was about 13 years, where we had a law or an amendment to the United States Constitution, and that amendment said it was not legal to produce or sell alcohol or alcoholic beverages. So sometimes you'll see people referring to the time. And again, when you see a capital P, that's referencing that 13-year period of time. Another related word you might hear is prohibitive. This is an adjective. It means tending to prohibit or forbid something. Could also mean enough of something to prevent the use or purchase of something. So one way I hear this word used is in a phrase, cost prohibitive. And really, all that means is another way to say something is too expensive, that other people are not going to be able to afford or buy that particular thing. So something I've seen and heard in news in the last month here is that internet access is cost prohibitive for many families. It means it's too expensive for many families to buy for their homes or apartments. Another related word is prohibitively. And because this ends in an ly, you might be thinking it's an adverb, and it is. It has a similar meaning that says in a way that forbids or prevents something. So our adverbs can describe actions, but they can also describe adjectives. And that's how it's going to be used in this example sentence. Houses in that neighborhood are prohibitively expensive. Expensive is our adjective. The adverb is describing it. And it's really just another way to say, I definitely cannot buy a house in that neighborhood. Everything is way too expensive. I hope today's lesson has been useful and that you'll try out either speaking or writing sentences with the verb prohibit. Have a great day.